but let's go ahead and let me get this started. I am Carol Grooms, and I'm the current president of the American School Band Directors Association. And once again, here we find ourselves a month from when we did this last, having another one of our interviews with a musical icon. It's such a pleasure to be able to welcome everybody to this. And tonight in particular is an important one to those of us who have made our living and continue to make our living in the world of bands. We have a guest with a military background, a military band background, and that is such an important piece of our ancestry as a medium for making music, and particularly in the last half century or so. You know, our military bands have such a tremendous resource and gift to those of us in education that we should never diminish the importance of that. So I would like to introduce the folks on our panel tonight, and I'll start with our guest, who's Colonel Hal Gibson, retired from the U.S. Army. And we are so pleased to have you with us tonight. We also have retired member and past President Monty Dunham from Wisconsin. And we have associate member Lowell Graham, a fellow military man, Colonel Lowell Graham from the United States Air Force. And then we have three of our active members in ASBDA, Holly Cannell from Alabama, Eric Perkins from Utah, and Jason Tucker from Texas. And each of these folks on the panel will have some questions for Colonel Gibson, and Monty will facilitate. And I will step back and let you all take it over. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here on the panel. And for those of you who are watching at home, thank you for joining us tonight. Monty?
Colonel Gibson, it's such an honor to have you with us. Everything you've done and your willingness to share with us is just really appreciated. I get to start, and I get to take us on the journey from birth up until about 1976, and Lowell's going to take over there. And there's a stop in Texas that we won't go into too much in depth because that's going to come up later as well. So Hal, where were you born, and how did everything start?
I was born in Oklahoma City, way back 1924. And I was very fortunate to have had the opportunity to play in one of the nation's top high school band. That would have been Classen High School. And our director was Oakley Pittman. Now, that was back in the days when we still had national contests, and you went through the regional contest before you finally were able to participate in the national contest. And annually, that's what we did. We played in the national contest year after year. It's just an incredible band and orchestra. Of course, I played both. French weren't, but I played both band and orchestra. And during that time, became acquainted with Dr. James Nielsen, who may know was the president of the CBDNA, College Band Directors National Association, and one of the early members of the Hall of Fame. And he was Mr. Everything at Oklahoma City University. And he became acquainted with my playing. He asked me if I would participate in his band and orchestra while I was in high school. So I did that for at least the last 2 years. And so when I graduated high school in 1942, there was no question that he was going to ensure that I didn't go anywhere else. I had looked at a couple of those schools, and he had latched on to me. And James Nielsen was a big mentor and friend for life after that. So I was also, at that time, I was very fortunate to become a member of the Oklahoma Symphony, which at that time was conducted by Victor Alessandro. Alessandro was he was a charismatic, a wonderful conductor. He had a very elegant manner about him. He was slightly crippled, but so he would sit in a very high chair to conduct the orchestra in rehearsal, not of course during the concert. But that was back in the days when everybody smoked, and he always had a cigarette in his one hand while he was conducting with the other. And it was a marvelous experience for a young person. But before that, I had had the opportunity to play in what was called the National Youth Orchestra. This was a project of the government. A lot of people today are not aware that during the early days of Franklin Roosevelt's term, we had just come out, we were still, in fact, involved in a really terrible worldwide depression. And he began a number of things to help bring the country out of that depression. And much is happening today with large sums of money being given out. Money was flowing to various parts of our country, and that included the arts, the writers, composers, and various illustrators were paid by the government. And a lot of people don't know this, but our major symphonies also were given a good bit of money by the what was called the WPA. And as a part of the WPA, of course, they were subjected to a lot of jokes, people standing on the shovels and so forth, but they did a lot of things, built a lot of buildings. And but they also had this National Youth Orchestra. Actually, there were 3 in the country. And this is when I was in high school. And so I auditioned for the NYA Orchestra, as it's called. And I was a horn player in that orchestra. And that was the first time I had ever been paid to play the horn. I thought, my gosh, this is a dream come true. I just couldn't believe it. I was still in high school, of course. And some things developed, of course, but what happened was the war began, and a lot of the people in the city were instantly called in, and that created some opportunities for those younger players, such as myself, to play in the Oklahoma Symphony. But it was a great experience to be surrounded by this bunch of magnificent musicians and a wonderful conductor. We played a national radio broadcast every week on what was called at that time the Mutual Broadcast Network. And I was doing that at the same time that I started to call, and this again was James Nielsen's thing. He said, oh, there's a thing that you must join. And it's called the Army Specialized Training Program, ASTP. And we enlisted into the Army in this program, but we remained in college for a few months. And we were all called in at the same time. So when I was called into the Army, it was college students from all through the Southwest that took basic training together. And I remember the students from Texas A&M that were all in those days in the Corps. They would have pep rallies every night and prayed all throughout. I thought, what is with these guys? We're in the Army now. But it was kind of a unique experience. And But let me tell you something about this National Youth Orchestra that is a bit unusual. We were preparing a concert to be played in early December in a big, magnificent hall. And I remember it like it was yesterday. We were playing the Tchaikovsky First Piano Concerto and Prelude to the Meistersinger. But that afternoon, in early December, I was out. We were visiting my grandparents, but the NBC Symphony always played on Sunday afternoon. And I was listening to their broadcast, and suddenly it was interrupted. And the announcer said, we'd like to announce that the Japanese Imperial Forces have just bombed our base at Pearl Harbor. So I went in to tell my parents, my grandparents, that they've just bombed Pearl Harbor. And all of them said, where's that? And that night, we came to the concert hall. If you can imagine the somber mood of the audience, it was obvious we were now in World War II. And so that was it. That was the end of the National Youth Orchestra, of course. But right after that, I became a member of the Oklahoma Symphony and played in that until I was called in with all of those, the Army Specialized Training Program. And later during World War II, I served in the South Pacific with about 16 million other guys. And it's funny, I was with a squadron in what was known as the Army Air Corps. And the war ended in August, of course. We dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, and then 2 days later on Nagasaki. And the Japanese then surrendered after four long years of war. So we were all over there, just kind of standing around with nothing to do. The war was over. And so a clerk came to me one day and said, hey, Gibson, I've got something that just came in for you. I said, they're bringing some entertainers over here. There was an entertainer called Kay Kaiser. I don't know if any of you ever knew Kay Kaiser and his College of Musical Knowledge, kind of a kooky show. And they said, he's coming over with two young lady entertainers, and we got to find a band. And in those days, long before we had records on the internet, all of our records were in manila folders. And that's how we had to find all the information. And they had gone through, and mine, when you came in, they asked me, what was your profession? And I was playing in the orchestra. I said, so they put down professional musician. And they said, we sure are a musician, and we'd like you to take this group, put it together, go find some other players. And I said, well, I think you've got the wrong guy. I said, I'm a symphony player. I said, I really don't play that kind of music that Kay Kaiser played. And the clerk said, listen, this is your chance. I was way down in Mindanao, in the midst of the jungles down there. He said, this is your chance to get out of this hellhole, that you're going to be sent to Manila to do this. So go up there, act like you know what you're doing, you'll do fine. So that's what I did. And we began to find these players the same way, going through that. And it's amazing, we found a lot of people over there that played instruments. So we put that show together and turned around the bases. And right after that, two other entertainers came over, and they were Danny Kaye, a great, great comedian, and Leo DeRocher, who was the coach of the Brooklyn Dodgers, a very strange pair. But they had a very clever act. But Danny Kaye loved to lead the band. And he had an unusual style. I'm not going to say on this broadcast what Leo DeRoche said to him one day about his conducting and what he thought people were following and so forth. But we were doing that, and I thought, well, that's it, and I'll wait till I go home. And then I got another call from a clerk. He said, "You're on orders to go to Japan." He said, "We will be entering Japan in November." And he said, "You're going to have two other players go with you." I said, "Well, how am I supposed to get up there?" He said, "We don't have any of that. That's up to you. You got to find your way up there." So I knew the two other players. They were in this group. And just by guessing, by golly, I looked all over the plane, finally found, took one plane, I think, to Dulagi. But there was a group going in from the 11th Airborne. And these guys are sitting on that plane loaded for bear. They're sitting there, rifle between their knees, steel helmet, grim-faced. And here are the three of us in khakis, our little duffel bags heading out. And so we came in, we landed at Sugi Airport. And I remember getting off that plane. There were probably, maybe 25 of us on that plane. And I looked about, and there must have been 1,500, 2,000 Japanese soldiers there. I thought, we're kind of outnumbered here. I hope all of these guys have gotten the message that this is over. But somehow we made it known that we were supposed to go into downtown Yokohama. And we rode into Yokohama in an old school bus that had been converted to run on a steam engine with wood burning engine on the back because they had no fuel left. And so there I was in, some of the very, very first people. And this is something that Lowell will really be interested in. We began to get all these players from here, there, Heather and Jan. As I say, there were a lot of good players over there that never had gotten any type of military band. They just were over there doing their duty in another way. And then they began to send some from the state, the new people coming into the service. And there was a young French horn player that came over there. I've forgotten where he was from, but he was not one of those that had been in the service. And so we became very, very good friends of being horn players and so forth. And he was telling me one day, he said, I've been made an offer. They're forming a new band in Washington, D.C. That's going to be the Air Force Band. I said, "Oh, is that right?" Said, "Yes, they've called a person in from civilian life." He said, I know who he is. I've never worked with him. His name is George Howard. He said, "I'm debating whether I should join that band." I said, well that's interesting offer. So we had a point system. I came home and got out of the service, of course, and forgot all about that. Colonel Graham, the name of that horn player happened to be Joe Frenny.
Wow.
And later I thought,
Wow. Yes, I know of that name.
He was the first horn player of the Air Force Band for how many years? Many, many years.
20 some, yes.
20 some. And so after, and it was at an ABA concert that I ran into him. He was playing in the Air Force Band. That joke for anybody. So we got in touch, and I had him out to visit my home in Laurel, Maryland. Wonderful guy. So, yeah, it's funny the people that you run into and become friends with. So.
Hal, these are just priceless stories. Thanks for sharing. So after the war, what was your path at that point?
Okay, after the war, I began really getting back in shape again because I had not played my whole at that time. And before the war, I had been talking to people, and so I said I had auditioned. I had a chance to play in the Mexico City Symphony, so I said I want to pursue that. And oh, that's your friend. So I did go to Mexico City and played in the Mexico City Symphony under Carlos Chavez. And that was a very interesting experience. There were 18 Americans playing in the orchestra at that time. And one of the other horn players was from the New York Philharmonic. So there were some good players in that orchestra. And I came back, I did one stint in one of the studios, came to Class B studio in LA, Monogram Studio. And I said, well, I realize I've got to finish my education, and I can't just run all over the country playing these jobs. So I did, and I came back and again went to Oklahoma City University for 1 year. And that's where I met my wife, Marie. And Marie and I, incidentally, will be celebrating our 74th anniversary next Tuesday, August 31st. So I left Oklahoma City and moved to Dallas. Had the opportunity I was going to play at, of course, SMU. So I went to SMU, but also I had the opportunity for many, many playing jobs at that time in Dallas, right after World War II. Oh, the playing jobs were just everywhere. All the ice shows had orchestras. Dallas had a big season of musicals. And I almost instantly, upon moving to Dallas, became the first call horn player. So I was playing all of the time there. And then the Army established a new National Guard division. It would be the 49th Armored Division at Love Field, Texas. And I was approached to be the band leader of that National Guard band. So it was kind of like the Bicentennial Band. I was there with just no band really player. We just had a little handful. I'd go to many of my friends at Southern Methodist and say, hey, how about coming out and playing my band? And they just laughed. Are you crazy? Because they were all veterans. They said, you'll never find me in an Army uniform again. And it was rather slow going for a bit. But after about 1 year, I came out one Tuesday night, and the whole lawn was filled with young men. The country had just initiated a draft. So they all voted in the National Guard band, of course. And so it became a really outstanding band. And I arranged for that to be the official band of the first Dallas professional football team. It was not the Cowboys, it was the Dallas Texans. And to do so, I knew we need a large group. So the division band is authorized 64 players. But I went to my division commander. I said, we have this opportunity to make a big splash, but I need a lot more players. I'd like to go to 100 players. And I said, we're going to have a lot of visibility. It was in the National Guard, they were trying to build up their status, so forth. So the division commander instantly agreed. Oh, that's a great idea. I said, I'm going to need equipment, uniforms for all these people, 100. And that's what we did. And we began a weekly radio show, 49ers on Parade. And it was a good band, very good band. But then they began the National Guard and the Army, what was called the Eisenhower Trophy. And that was to be awarded to the most outstanding, what we call company size unit in the state. Now, at that time, Texas had 3 divisions and, National Guard troops all over the place. So there were 585 of these company size units in the state of Texas. And the very first year that award was given, the 49th Army Division Band was named as the winner. And in fact, I have this picture of Governor Allen Shivers handing me this huge award. It was always about like this. And lo and behold, we won it again the next year. So the Army kind of got that. I got my name in the paper. Pretty soon I'll find myself being called back into the Army as a band leader. And I was the I was brought in to be the director of the 4th Armored Division Band. And they were preparing to go to Germany. And it actually was 2 bands, because there was a core band also at Fort Hood, and I just made one large band out of all of those. And we were working very diligently getting ready for this move to Germany. Well, what happened, I got orders one day that I'm to report to Washington. And I thought, I've been in a very short time. And I thought, I went home, told me, this is nice. I'm being sent to Washington for a week. I'm doing something at this Navy School of Music, which was at Anacostia, and the Army and Navy both trained their musicians there. So later, about a week later, I get a call from the director of the band in San Antonio. For the Army has a number of, people don't realize, also armies within the Army. There are 8. And so the 4th Army was San Antonio. And this person called up and said, Al, did you get those orders? And I said, yeah, I sure did. I'm really looking forward to that. He said, you are? I said, yes. He said, well, don't you know what's going on? No, not really. He said, well, they're bringing up all the Army band leaders to see which ones they're going to get rid of. And he said, you've been teaching school, and you're right, I'm going to come up. You've got to help me with theory and citing all these things that we're going to be judged on. So he did. And we were set up there in groups of 6 and 7. And it was like a 2-week evaluation, just like you would go at a university. They checked everything. And I really enjoyed it with another group of Army band leaders that had been band leaders much longer than I had. And we had to write a composition and then rehearse that with members of the Army band. And so I did, and of course I was not too long out of school. I'd finished my master's at SMU, and we did that. We conducted a standard overture. They had like some work that you had to sight read and so forth. But the adjudicators of these band leaders were made up of the top band leaders in the Army. And the leader of the Army band at that time was Major Hugh Curry. He was the predecessor for Colonel Sam Lamotta. And after I'd finished my rehearsal and so forth with this band, he called me over. He said, Jim, I'm going to bring you to the Army band. He said, I have a vacancy. I want you to take this job. So I was on cloud nine. I came home to tell my wife, we're going to Washington. And so I went about my duties, 4th Army Division. And I get a call one morning from the general. He said, Gibson, what's this about you going to Washington? Yes, sir. I said, I've got the opportunity to go to the Army band. He said, well, you're not going anywhere. He said, you're going to Germany. I said, well, General, this is a marvelous opportunity for me. He said, it's an opportunity to be my band leader. So that's what happened. I went to Germany. And as it worked out, it was probably the best thing. When I first went, this is kind of interesting. When I first went down there, but it was also Fort Hood, the general was named Bertie B. Barnes. And he called me up to his office one day. Right after I'd gotten there, he said, I want to talk to you about the band, these types of things. He said, first of all, do you know what my full name is? I said, no, sir. He said, well, it's Bertie Beethoven Barnes. I said, Bertie Beethoven Barnes. He said, his father was one of the itinerant band leaders, much like the Music Man, Harold Hill, that was somewhat prevalent in those days. So I thought, oh, I think I have it made. A division commander, loved band. His father was a band leader, and I thought this is just going to be great. Well, in the Army, you can be at work one day and be relieved and be to another place the very next day. There's no 6 months. And unfortunately, this division commander was relieved. And he was replaced by an utter tyrant. But his name was Andrew P. O'Meara. Some of his classmates, of course, called him Andy O'Meara. Oh, he was just a rough rider. He would just walk down, said he didn't like somebody, you're relieved. And so he called me today. He said, I've just had a meeting with the 7th Army commander. The 7th Army was in charge of the groups in Germany. And he said, he told me the most important thing that's going on in Germany right now is the program to solidify our relations with the German people. And he said, the best way to do that is through music. The Germans absolutely love music. And he said, he told me, he told the Germans, I want you to have a fine band. But he told me, he said, we're not going to have a fine band. We're going to have the best band in Europe. Said, you're going to assure me that that's going to be the case? I will, by all means, sir. So he said, any person in this division that you want, you just tell me. said, you've got it. That's it. I said, what about the size of the band? He said, I want the biggest band you can create. Well, I thought, here we are. So we did not have the dress uniform for the division band like that. He collected money from every soldier in the division to have us all outfitted from the very fine tailor in San Antonio with the dress blue uniform. So we went over there with a good band. I had a lot of young, very fine players right out of college and so on. And I guess the highlight of that tour, we were recognized as the most outstanding Army band. There were 14 in Europe, but none were quite of the caliber because of the support I was given from the general. So they said there is going to be a big international music competition in Erlangen, Germany. And you're going to be the band that represents the United States Army. I said, okay. So we went up to this competition. There were 80 bands from 22 countries. And my first band I heard up there was a Dutch professional band. They were all playing in tails. And I thought, wait a minute, this is not the type of competition that we're really ready for. And so I told my first sergeant, who spoke 9 languages, I said, Tommy, you've got to get us out of this. I don't want to go back and tell them, yeah, we came in 25th or 30th in this contest. I said, we're not ready for this type of competition. So he came back later. I said, you get that done? He said, he hardly acknowledged. So we went, it was in a beautiful castle, fabulous auditorium, wonderful acoustics. And I remember we opened with this Spanish march. And from the time I gave that downbeat, I thought, God, I don't know which band this is. It's not my band. And I'll never forget, our major work was the prelude to the Meistersinger. And we kicked that thing off, and but it sounded almost like Colonel Graham's Air Force band. It was really outstanding. So as it turned out, our band was named #1 in concert playing and marching, and that really put us on the map. But also, while I was there, I went to a ceremony one night the Germans had around a bonfire, and they were all playing these open horns, nothing in the middle, just round horns. And I was so impressed with that. And I said, I'm going to start a band like that. And as it worked out, and we were all over there for 3 years, but my band was filled with draftees, and they were only in the Army for 2 years. So they'd had 6 months training. They were with me for 18 months. And here, the vast majority of my band heads back to the States. And so I thought, this is the perfect opportunity to start that Bavarian band. And again, I talked to this first sergeant of mine who was older than I was, actually, and many of the players were older. And I said, I've got this idea for this Bavarian band. I said, I'm going to make it a volunteer situation. And, but I said, one of the things, my band, but then my cadre, we had many black players, fine players. I said, the situation is, I've never seen any black Bavarians, but he said, well, let's do it, whatever they want. Well, everybody wanted to join this band. So we all outfitted ourselves with lederhosen, the leather pants, the fancy, they call them, the pants called the lederhosen, and what were the suspenders, the Traeger. We had the Bavarian hats, and this band just became hugely popular. One of the things, they would see us marching down the street, and here we'd come. We were invited to every fest you could think of. And I'd see the Germans and their let's go together. They'd let John, they're modding, and then they have this kind of astounded look on their face. And then they all break out laughing that half my band are black, and they'd never seen black Bavarians. And it made all of the local newspapers and so forth. And so we were just invited everywhere. And I know one of my players said, he said, oh, this is so good. What all these things we're doing. I said, let's just keep doing this and not go back. I said, we don't have that choice. We are the division band. But when it came time for me to leave and come back to the States, I was having an exit interview with my general. He said, now, what about the Bavarian band? I want you to brief the new band leader incoming to tell him how this goes. And we got to get that done. I said, well, sir, he might not want to do that. He said, oh, that's not his choice. How the thing we have going, said, there's going to be a Bavarian band here. So and we made the most of it. We just had a wonderful time in Germany. And,
Hey, Hal, this is Monty. You know, your impact is incredible, and we're hearing such wonderful things. Could you just flash forward to your impact on the field band? And then I want to turn it over to Lowell, because Lowell's going to go with some Bicentennial Band questions. And we could listen to you all night, but we also have to be respectful of our time here. So I'm going to move you to that if we can.
Well, right after I returned from Germany, I was assigned to the Army Field Band as the third band leader. I was a captain. And the commander of the field band at that time was Colonel Beerley. And there were two captains, Captain Wilmot Trumbull and myself. And I was there, not quite 2 years. And then I got another one. He called, said, we are trying something new to try to raise the standards of our Army band. And we want you to take what would be a supervisory position. And that you're going to have half the country to travel about auditioning the players that are in these bands and judging what their capabilities are, what they need to do to improve. So I somewhat reluctantly took that job. I didn't have a choice. But so I traveled all over the country visiting these Army bands. And she was asked about flying. Well, I've always had airplanes. So I worked for this colonel that, I don't know, he just kind of took my life over. In fact, we were really good friends. I asked him, I said, you know, I'm authorized to take my car to these various bases and be paid mileage. I said, what about if I just flew my airplane and collected the mileage? And he said, sure, why not? So I did that. I'd fly my plane down to the base where I was going to inspect the band. And of course, I never told this captain. I said, I'm coming on behalf of the general, who was a three-star general. I always use the general's name. I'm here on behalf of the general. I need to park my, oh yes, by all means. So that's what I did. And Oh, one other thing, while I was in Germany, they had a World Army worldwide choral competition. So they started that when I was still in Texas, and I asked some sergeant to put together a chorus. I said, well, we'll enter that. Well, nothing happened. So I realized when we were in Germany, I said, I'm going to do that myself. So we formed this chorus, and as it worked out, we won the Army Worldwide Choral Competition. So I got this call one day. They said, listen, we've been approached from West Point, see about you coming up there. I said, we've got a vacancy with the band, you'd be assigned to the band, but also to do the Cadet Glee Club. I said, well, I'm ready to go. I wanted out of that position working with the other bands. So I went to West Point, and a marvelous place, beautiful place, of course. And that is one of the Army's 3 special bands. So that's a permanent assignment. But one Friday afternoon, I got a call from Colonel of the Pentagon, and he said, for purposes I'd rather not to reveal, the commander of the Army Field Band has been relieved. 10 people have been considered. You've been selected. You want the job. I said, well, I need to talk to my wife, but there was no question. So 2 weeks later, I was at Fort Meade, and 1 week after that, we were on a 90-day tour. 90 days, no days off, playing for 90 days. And that was my initiation to the Army Field Band. And so it was 2 years later, or maybe about a year and a half, maybe, I started what was called, we called it the studio band, modeled on the studios of LA and New York. So it was kind of we already had another group. It was kind of a ceremonial group. I said, we don't need another ceremonial group. We need a band like this. And so it was a band that had like the straight ahead dance band instrumentation, but also 3 horns, an oboe, tuba, and like the studios. That's so. The person that I put in charge of that was Charlie Almeida. He said, what's the name of this group? I said, I don't know, it's a studio. So it went by the studio band for years, and then became the Jazz Ambassadors. And a lot of people don't know this, but what happened after we kind of culled it down from the studio type to regular dance band instrumentation, we were asked to play a dance at Fort McNair for all of the General Corps that came over. And so we did that. And well, one of the persons in attendance, being an AG officer, as all of us in the band were, was Sam Laboda. And he told me then 2 weeks later, he said, hell, I don't know why I never thought that we need a band like that. So that's how the Army Blues came into effect. It was actually from the studio band. But later, I've forgotten the exact year, we were on tour. When we were on tour, we would play up to 12 concerts a week. That's a lot of concerts. 7, we played like 6-night crew, always played Sunday afternoon, and 5 day jobs. So that's a heavy schedule. 12 concerts a week. And,
incredible, Hal. Hey, Hal, can I divert to a question we have to ask? We have a situation we want to cover here with one of our questions, and then we really want to get to that Bicentennial Band. So Holly's going to ask you a question, and then we're going to turn it over to Lowell. If you're okay right there, can we stop you?
Okay, fine.
Thanks, Hal. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Gibson, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was not smart and accidentally left my charger at school today, so I need to ask my question before my computer dies.
Okay.
So I understand that you happened to be the one who wrote a piece for Mr. Robert Jager, or that you and he had some kind of connection along the way, a piece called Epilogue, Lest We Forget. So I happen to be an alumnus of Tennessee Tech University. I missed
Really?
I missed Mr. Jager as a theory professor. He was still there when I was a student, and I performed with the Tech Symphony Band when we did his retirement concert. So his music is actually very special to me. And by the way, he's not on here tonight, but if he watches this, going forward as on a recording, happy birthday. Today is his birthday.
Oh, really?
Yes. So I would really like for you to talk about that piece, Epilogue, Lest We Forget. Like, how did that piece come about? Why did you write it? What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think really the piece almost speaks for itself, but incidentally, your band leader there at Tennessee Tech is one of my great friends. And he was on he was on the program with Monty the last time I did it. Joe Herman, yeah. Well, you wonderful guy. How fortunate you were to be under such an inspirational guy there. He's a wonderful person and a great band director, of course. But
absolutely.
Well, let me tell you a funny little anecdote about Robert Jager. Of course, he went to Michigan, became their chief arranger. And the band director at Michigan was and is a legend. I have always called him the greatest college band director of all time. We've got a lot of wonderful directors out there now, of course. But that was Dr. William D. Ravelli. And he was rather tyrannical in his approach. But not rather, he was tyrannical. He could just drive a person absolutely into the ground. And so Robert Jager came home and told his parents, said, we always said my name was Jager. He said, well, Dr. Ravelli, he always calls me Jaeger. He said, so if Dr. Ravelli said that must be right. But, he wrote a lot of wonderful music. I remember doing the thing that I conducted myself at an ABA convention that happened to be in 1973. It was in Washington, D.C. And it's his theme on a music by Robert. It's The Happy Farmer. Such a fun piece. And sometimes they play things that are just so serious in nature at the ABA concerts. But I thought they needed a lighter moment, and I was very proud to play that piece of his. But I played, a lot of his things. Free to course, his music is just marvelous music for the concert band, and you're lucky that he was there. But, yeah, so that's what I can see of it. Yeah.
Thanks, Hal. Holly, was that good? Are we good, Holly?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, sure. It didn't. I don't know how the piece came about, but I always love hearing stories about professors from my alma mater, so that was pretty fantastic.
Hal,
That's great.
Anything to share specifically with that piece, Hal?
Pardon?
Anything to share specifically with that piece?
Well, no, I've just got some of the other things, perhaps. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, one of the things we really want to talk about is perhaps one of the greatest bands assembled. So Lowell, if you want to go to that, that'd be great.
Colonel Gibson, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, my
You've
pleasure.
had a great career, and I want to be respectful of the time of our audience here. So I'm going to be very focused and pinpointed in my questions, and so we can get to our other panelists here. The Bicentennial Band was an incredibly unique band, and the reason I wanted to ask you the question about the Bicentennial Band was that's when the first time I met you. I was a second lieutenant when the Bicentennial Band was being formed. So a couple of quick questions because it's so unique. It's a purple band made up of all forces. First of all, when did you know that you were going to be its leader? Who informed you of it? How was it funded? And how did you recruit the players from the service bands?
Okay. Well, here's what happened. For 2 years, they met, and you know all about this, and nothing happens overnight. They discussed what would be the contribution that the Department of Defense would make for this big 200th anniversary celebration. And I was approaching 30 years, so I'd sit in the back of the hall, look at the ceiling, and they'd talk about some of the most impossible things. I don't know if you remember that the Army Band had this big show, Prelude to Taps. Did you ever see that with the carriages? Well, that they were going to take that on the road. And I was with a touring band. I'd sit back there. Yes, I can imagine going to the Holiday Inn. I said, there'll be 104 people, 8 horses, these carriages. There was no way, but that was just one of the many things that they were talking about. So I'd sit there and think, okay. And then one day, a general, happened to be an Air Force general, came to, well, when people think of the military, they think of bands and flags. I thought, perked up a bit. They said, what we need is a band made up of players of all the forces. And they kind of lived, but so it came about. Said, well, that's probably a workable idea. That where are we going to get it? They're going to come right out of the bands that we have. They said, well, who are you going to get to lead that band? I said, well, we're going to look at the band leaders of all services, active and retired. If the person we want retired, we're just going to call them back to active duty. I don't know, that's a lot of band leaders. I think that kind of lets me off the hook for that. But I was on tour when 3 people from the Pentagon flew out and said, oh, we need to talk to you about what's involved with forming a touring band, because that's the whole idea. They were helping me. And so we talked, and but they said, well, you're the one that has all this experience. When I came back, I was calling in and they said, well, we've looked at a lot of people, but we think you're the one that should be doing this job. So I went to my, I said, Jim, I said, if this had come 10 years earlier, I would have jumped at the chance. But I said, I want to get out before I'm 50 because I want to get a university job. He said, oh, they're going to be there. There's a lot of jobs like that. You can't turn it down. You have to do this. So I did. So I was at a subsequent meeting, and they said, well, you have been named the commander, and there were 2 officers that are going to be assigned to you, one from the Navy, one from the Air Force, and that's it. And your mission is to form this band and tour all 50 states, playing in all state counties. So as I said, well, would I be able to bring my own staff? And they said, well, you can do that. So I brought staff of people that I've worked with for many years and so forth. And we were authorized to get 20 people from the Washington bands. And we also had a representative from the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard, the 42-piece band. We couldn't rate. I had 2 members of the Coast Guard. But I mean, you've been in this position. Can you imagine the position I'm in? I report to the Navy band that I'm here to see about getting 20 of your players. You can imagine how popular I was with the band leader in Washington. And I mentioned the Navy particularly. I probably shouldn't get into personalities, but I will. The commander of that band was Ned Muffley. Did you ever know Commander?
You might want to move along. We don't want to go there.
Yeah, okay. And he stood right over my shoulder as these people were coming up to talk to me. And one of the young men that came up from the Navy band happened to be a euphonium player, Brian Bowman. And so it was that situation. I went to all of the bands. And
Where did you rehearse? What was your point? So you went to the band, you recruited. Then where was your home base to rehearse before you went out?
At that time, we really didn't. When we first started, we didn't have a home base. That was one of my my responsibilities. And of course, the people in the military will want me to bail out of all their mistakes. The recruiting people had done.
But of course.
Yeah, I think it was insane. Well, some part of the country, they had leased 2 sets of buildings. And they said it was very embarrassing. They said they want me to take over one of their sets of buildings to get them off the hook. And other people wanted me to come up to Fort Sheridan, that they had some empty bases that they were trying to fill so they could stay open. And to tell you, dude, I don't know how this happened. Fort Meade had 2 bands already, the Army band, the field band. Somehow I got that band established at Fort Meade, Maryland.
Yeah, I wondered about that. Colonel Gibson, from the time that you were anointed, sir, to take this over, before you went on your first tour, how long was that? A year?
Not a long time, but this is something I know you'll be interested in. Of course, we had nothing, and I had a budget, and so we began getting the players in, and like with the other, we established the initial pay grade of E6, but that meant we had to buy a set of Dresden timpani, Meinl Wesson tubas, and they were on a 2-year hold. Somehow I got them there. I had one of those I'd taken with me, and we had to buy buses. But the Pentagon said, we're on a 2-year moratorium. You can't buy any moving equipment for 2 years. I said, well, our organization will cease to exist in 2 years. So I don't know how this happened, but we put together this band, and I got this building, a 3-story building that was the only building on Fort Meade air conditioned, and one of my big bosses was Chappie James. For
Indeed.
those who know, Chappie James was one of the Tuskegee Airmen, and I don't know, he seemed like he was 3 feet taller than I was. I'd look up to him, and I said, I thought we needed a chorus with this band. No, there's not going to be any chorus. This is the band. And I kept over and over. And I said, no, to do the job that we need to do, we need a chorus to help sell this message of American history. No, we're not going to have to. Finally, I was in with one day, he said, all right, you can have your damn chorus, but you're not going to get any more money for it. I said, well, that's all right, sir. I've already put it in the budget. So we
That's
24 voice, and that was the services were just integrating women.
right.
That
Right.
was my
I
first
remember
experience.
so vividly. I want to bring this to a conclusion because I want to pass this off. One of your players, bass drum players, was who became one of my chiefs, Joe Tessero, or excuse me, Joe Taylor. And Joe said, per your touring, he said, you know, if we stayed in a hotel more than one night, we were laying carpet and putting up pictures. That's how much you
right.
worked.
Well,
So
let me tell you one incident that I know you'll enjoy. I was in the Pentagon trudging those halls, as you know how you have to do to get everything and all this. And so one of these generals who plays said, well, this band is sure costing us a lot of money. I hope those people are all going to be able to read music. I thought, what does he think we were recruiting? As you know, our players all have master's degrees and outstanding players. I thought, okay, if that is the mentality, what I am going to do is we are going to assemble this band and we are going to perform a concert with no rehearsal. No. And that's so we put all the band together. I remember one of the players said, you sure you don't want to sneak in one? I said, no. I said, that's what we're going to do. And we had people from the Washington Post, all kind of people from the Pentagon. And this is not an easy program. It was a lot of difficult work.
that's why they get paid the big bucks, sir.
And so we played this program, and the guy from the Washington Post said, this is already probably the best band I've ever heard, and they've never rehearsed one.
That's great.
That was a thing that we did. We gave the first concert, right, of course, in the building,
Right.
but with no rehearsal.
Colonel, thank you so very much for sharing that. I'd like to turn this over to one of my colleagues, Jason or Eric. Monty, who do you want to take that to? Thank you so much for sharing, sir.
Oh, thank you. No.
We'll go to Jason next, Hal, because Jason teaches in Dallas. And before we started tonight, you guys were talking a little bit about that. So Jason, why don't you go ahead and ask Colonel Gibson your question here?
Well, I said I would really enjoyed, some of the story earlier about the Texas years. It actually, though, led me just to think about something else in general. And that's, that you have such Colonel, a unique perspective in seeing basically the evolution of band from the 1940s to where we are today. And I just would love to have your thoughts, if you don't mind, on what have been some of the greatest accomplishments and maybe what you think some of the greatest challenges and what has changed in your lifetime where you might like to see it go.
I'm having a bit difficult time understanding, but I think you're talking about, are you talking about my personal challenges or the situation in Texas?
Oh, really, and just in the world of band in general, the changes that we've seen from, again, the end of World War II through Sputnik and the focus on technology, science, math, and such. That
Yeah,
I'm just wondering though, what have you seen as the highlights, the most positive changes in band in your experience, and then things that may still be challenges or that we should look forward to in the future.
Well, I think that I was fortunate to come along at a time when there was an almost cataclysmic change in the whole band movement, and that would be the middle of the last century. If you think about it, and unfortunately, a lot of these composers are no longer being played, but at the middle of the century, we had a raft of outstanding composers. I have to mention my own student and great friend, of course, Francis McBeth, Barney Chance, Clifton Williams, Frank Erickson, and the people of that ilk were giving us music of such higher standard than we'd had before. But before, we all played the transcriptions. We played the old things of Mayhew, Lake, and we played every overture that there was transcribed for band. And of course, it was Fred Fennell that at that same time that he'd played in these bands where they had 15, 20 trumpets, and there were so many duplications on the part. So he began almost as an experiment to have this thing where it was virtually one on a part. Now, of course, that doesn't include the clarinets and so forth. They have to be balanced. But actually, the person that was my exec all of the years with the field band and succeeded me as a commander was Sam Fricano, who unfortunately died last year. Sam was in that first group that Dr. Fennell put together. And I get these things posted daily from Laura Schisler. He had the program the other day, and I was reading and looking at all the players and a lot of them. But Sam said it was really just something he wanted to try to do. They never had a band at Eastman. Bands in that day and time weren't considered on the par with the orchestras of that day. So that's why the term band is almost dropped from existence in college ranks, except for the football bands, of course. But the turning point seemed to be right there at the mid-century, that this great music was coming out, and these people were saying, well, we're going to play this music. And H. Owen Reed won the Pulitzer, of course, and that's not an easy piece. Lafayette, that's a difficult piece. And at that point, the bands began to think, well, we are the equal of any of the performing musical organizations. There's nothing that they do that we can't emulate, and in many ways do it better. And so we began branching out, and people all had their own ideas, like where I taught at Columbus. Now it's Columbus State. Jamie Nix, he has the wind ensemble and the wind orchestra. And so which one is the top group? Well, they're both the same, which is not true. But a good friend of mine, and Lola too, that was at the University of Tennessee when all this was going on, said, well, they all have these fancy names now, so he changed the name of his marching band. It's now his Mobile Wind Orchestra. And that's kind of where we went with that. But if you go to universities now, there are 3 levels of the band. You've got the top wind ensemble, and then the next group are the undergrads, and then there's the college. It might carry a fancier name, a symphonic band, something like that. But that's the band that's open to all students, music majors or not. And in a way, perhaps we've gotten so far away from the real band music with groups to the top group of no more than 40 players. And but the band as a medium, I think, has really come into its own, beginning at that time. And it's because of people like you that are training all these youth and raising the standards. year after year. Does that somewhat answer your question?
It really does. Thank you so much. And then just a quick thing for me, if you don't mind. I know you flew single fighter or single engine fighters. Which one did you fly?
Which what?
Which fighter plane did you fly in the South Pacific?
Oh, well, I was always a single engine guy. I flew a P-51. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Colonel. It's been a real honor to listen.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thanks, Hal. We're going to wrap up. I think Eric has some questions for you here too, so he'll bring us down the home stretch, so to speak.
All right.
Colonel, thank you for your time tonight. I just have one question as we finish up here. It's different from the one I was assigned, but it's my question, so I'm going to ask it. We all have that one piece that was like our favorite one to do. And all you're performing as a horn player, as a conductor, what was your favorite piece to ever do?
Favorite piece?
Sure.
Well, that's difficult. I've been asked that so many times. That's almost like asking, which is your favorite child? But there have been a number of things that I've just enjoyed so much. One that really a fast moving great piece, the Overture to Candide. That again is one of those transcriptions, but there was a piece that was written specifically for band. It had a little bit of everything. I think that's a beautiful piece, The Hounds of Spring. That's a great piece, but there are so many of these, and Clifton Williams wrote a lot of things too that I thought were great. And then, of course, my own student, Francis McBeth, Sailors and Whales. That's a wonderful suite, and the one that he wrote from the poem High Flight too. That both of those I think are outstanding pieces. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And Hal, I'm just going to, before I hand it back to Carol, just going to say on behalf of all of us, thanks for everything you've shared. It is my sincerest hope that as you look back on all these wonderful things you accomplished, you are fully aware of the impact you have had on thousands, if not millions of people and our profession as a whole. I cannot imagine how daunting that may seem, but I hope you feel that way because you've done that. And again, it's been an honor to meet you and get to know you a little bit tonight and prior. And thank you for sharing all of this with us. I hope you write a book if you haven't already, because the stories are absolutely priceless. And we should have probably slotted 3 hours for this.
Well, Monty, let me give you one quick rejoinder to what you just said. I don't feel so much what I have done for the profession, but I think in my life, what the profession has done for me and what music has meant to me in my life. I feel so grateful to have had the opportunity to have spent my life surrounded by these beautiful sounds. It's been a great, great ride. And not over yet, I'm already playing a new band about to start again. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you, Colonel Gibson. This has just been delightful, and I could listen to these stories for hours. I think we may have to have a part 2 sometime in a month or two. It's wonderful. And seriously, Monty took the words right out of my mouth. Are you writing a book? If not, please write a book. You must. Your life is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And the window that you can give all of us on the history of bands and how it's developed, and you're a primary source who was there to experience it and see it. You are a treasure. You are truly a treasure. And I can't thank you enough for being here with us tonight.
Thank you very much. No,
and I hope we can talk more.
All right.
So, everybody at home, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And we'll see you next month for our next interview guest to be determined. Goodbye, everybody.